Good morning. It's that time of day, folks. Time to take a break with Drake, America's Bible teacher, 7 a.m. weekdays. And our groovy music.
And here we go. Yes, we have a new set we're trying here. It looks like I'm sitting on the edge of outer space. And well, actually I am. This is another rendition of Deep Space Nine. Yeah, well, good to have you here today. We have reached, as we said, we've reached 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul amplifies the resurrection from so many angles that you just can't deny this thing anymore. It was about 55 AD in there when Paul is writing this book of 1 Corinthians, and Jesus' resurrection was 25 or so years old, and there were people in the Corinth church that would get scoffed at by the pagans around, and there were pagans everywhere, and they said, well, yeah, okay, well, maybe we'll drop the resurrection thing. And Paul said, you throw that out, you throw out everything. This whole thing is a fluke. Jesus is just a good moral teacher. And by the way, when you run into somebody that says, well, Jesus was a good teacher, reply instantly, do you follow his teachings? They never do.
Yeah, I hear you.
When someone says to me, oh, well, Jesus was a good teacher, I said, you don't follow his teachings. I state it, I don't ask. You don't follow his teachings, what do you mean? Well, some of them. I ask kids all the time. They're my earpiece.
Just let it go, babe.
Okay, earpiece fell out. We'll let it go.
Let it go.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, Aaron. He says, Scotty, beam him up.
Yeah, I say, you don't follow his teachings. And, I ask kids, always in their family setting, I say, kids, do you obey mom and dad all the time? And they usually say, well, most of the time. I said, okay, most of the time. All right, most of the time. How many of the holes in your boat should you patch before you go out to sea? Most of the holes? All the holes? That one hole in your boat that you won't patch will take the whole thing down. You've got to take all of Jesus' teaching. So you can't buzz him off as a good teacher. That's a dismissal that doesn't impress God or the devil. Well, the devil likes it, but he's like, oh, good, I got this guy suckered. That he thinks he can pick and choose Jesus. We were on a set with Robert Davi, and you may not have heard of him. He was, he was the bad guy on one of the Bond movies.
Yeah, he was probably the most popular Bond villain.
Yeah, he was the most popular James Bond villain.
Yeah.
I think
he was in Goonies.
Yeah, he was in Goonies, but when Michael Dalton, Timothy Dalton.
Yeah, Timothy Dalton, the least popular Bond against the most popular
villain.
Bond villain. Yes.
Robert
Good morning,
Davi,
Elisa.
that guy, by the way.
Good morning, Elisa. We're talking about Robert Davi.
Yeah, his first movie he was in is Cherry Hill from 1977. He co-starred with Sinatra, and he said being with Sinatra was like, wow, it's Sinatra. If you're under 50 years of age, you don't realize how huge Sinatra was in this country. He was kind of like the surrogate romantic substitute husband to all the wives whose husbands are away at war in World War II. They're in the Pacific, they're in Europe, they're in the South Pacific, and their husbands were gone. And they would watch Sinatra, and he just threaded the needle historically. He was so big. But Robert Davi got fired from a job, got put on the set of this Cherry Hill with Sinatra, and the first day comes lunch break, and Sinatra says, let me take you to lunch.
Hey, Nina.
Hi, Nina. And Sinatra took Robert back to the restaurant that had just fired him before he got onto this movie set. And Robert is kind of thinking, Mr. Sinatra, I used to work here. And Sinatra says, I know. As they're walking in, they get seated. He says, do you know that this restaurant just fired me? And Frank says, I know. I know exactly what I'm doing. Sinatra did this on purpose so that Robert would walk back into his prior restaurant and everybody would go, he left here and he's now working with Sinatra. I mean, shock waves went through the whole establishment. Anyhow, Robert told us that backstory because he was a guest on our show a couple of years ago. And
It's probably like 5 years ago now.
4.
4? Okay.
4.5. And so I just tell you that, it's kind of an aside, but Robert Davi is on our show. He's been to the top of the culture. He has albums out now. He's really a talented and a good guy. But we got to chat, and he found out we were Christians, and he said we were a lovely couple. And I asked him about his faith, and he stopped, and I'm going to remember this all my life. He stopped, he froze, and he took this grin off his face, and he said to me, stone cold sober, he says, Jesus is everything. I went, wow, this guy knows how to prioritize Jesus. Mm-hmm. What do we do with this Jesus? Has he risen from the dead? Was it a phantom? Was it a myth? Was the body stolen? Was it all just made up hullabaloo to kind of prop up this face so they could start and market some new credo jive? What do you do with the resurrected Christ? I was studying Hebrew in grad school in the late 1980s, and we had a teacher's assistant named Julie. She really knew the Hebrew. I mean, these ladies in language, it's called the mother tongue for a reason. And I know another lady, her family, they minister in China, and she works in China, and she teaches Hebrew to Chinese Mandarin speakers in Mandarin. Her native language is English, and she teaches Hebrew in Mandarin. Oh my goodness, how do you do that? But Julie was a Hebrew TA for us, and she helped us along. And it came for time for me to write my master's thesis, and it was on Jesus healing ministry. And I asked Julie if she would testify about some healing or her take on healing. And she said, well, I got to tell you, I was asked to pray for someone in our church who was new in our church after a life of alcoholism, and they had cirrhosis of the liver, and they are going down, final coma, septic shock, whatever it all is. And he had cirrhosis of the liver. Your liver looks like this maroon bird wing or however it is, but his was just looked like a bag of sand. It was awful. And he's dying. He's dying that day, 8 hours to live at the most. And she said, I just stood over him and put my hands out and said, Lord, our resurrected Lord, I'm calling on the resurrected Christ to come and resurrect this man. His color changed. He opened his eyes. He sat up and he said, what am I doing in this hospital? I'm fine. She said, Drake, get this in your book. When we call on the power of the resurrected Christ, we call on all the power of heaven. And we have no idea the immensity of this power because Christ has resurrected. Because the resurrected Christ conquers all. And I'm going to say something at the end here today. I hope I remember. But one thing also about this crucifixion, this burial, this resurrection, what does it all mean? What happened when Christ died? What changed? I mean, we know in our Christian heritage, we have a generation on us now, and it's been on us for. There's people in their 40s and 50s who they never prayed in school when they were kids. The public, the government, not Trump, but there's a big percentage of our government that wants to get Christ out. They are so frustrated. The only entity in this society that's fighting this pagan agenda from going full bloom is the Christians, and they want to get rid of these Christians. And so kids today, they don't understand the Christ resurrection, the crucifixion, the cross. What is this? The crosses are on buildings all over the country. Yeah, what's the deal? There's something about law. And I did quick little picture. I didn't give you this. When the innocent dies for the guilty, Jesus died for us. When the innocent die for the guilty are then declared innocent. There was a murder in the Old West, and this is a true story. And somebody's missing, and they found the body, and everybody loved this guy, and somebody hurt him and killed him. And they found the guy who did it, and it's just mob rule, and they arrange the rope, and they hang him, and they put him on a horse, and they whack the horse, and the horse disappears, and he hangs. And as he just died, the real murderer had just been found. The truly guilty person. But mob rule takes over, and logic goes out the window. Anger cancels logic, by the way. This guy who didn't do the murder had just stopped breathing. And then the real murderer was brought in. And the whole place went, oh, you could have heard a pin drop for a quarter mile. And they said, oh my goodness, we executed the wrong man. In some ways we can say at Calvary, the devil executed the wrong man.
Well, also in the Chronicles of Narnia, in the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Aslan dies in the place of Edmund.
Exactly.
And yeah, so and he talks about the deeper magic that the witch didn't know about.
Yeah, so this guy is declared, this guy is dead, the real murderer is found, and the place fell silent, and the magistrate who finally got this crowd to calm down, he said, this man has died in your place. You really committed the murder, but to execute both of you would actually triple the wrongness, because the guy that was murdered and now this guy was wrongly killed, two people had wrongly killed, to kill you would triple and quadruple the wrongness of this whole setting. So, because he has died for you, you are now declared innocent. And the man's face just turned white. That's what happens with Calvary. Satan wasn't guilty for killing all these people, all this history. And when we disobey, you will surely die. Genesis 2.
Yeah.
And Genesis 3, it happened. And so all through history, people have to die for the wrong they did. Yeah. Every single man on this earth has to die for the wrong he's did. And they all do die, and we all die. But when Christ was killed, the guilt is transferred from the guilty to the innocent, and then the guilt is dispelled, and we're then declared innocent because Christ has died. This isn't talked about in the pop culture anymore. It's talked about in many churches. There are some places that call themselves churches. They don't teach this anymore. They don't teach the resurrection. But the resurrection is everything. In Mark 16, we have Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome. Different list of ladies, but the same ladies that went to the tomb, and they kind of gone in staggers. But Salome she was at the cross one chapter prior. Mark mentions that. And some say that the other Mary here is the half-sister of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Some say that Salome is Herod Antipas' stepdaughter. Some say that Salome was Zebedee's mother. I opened up a big can of worms when I looked into that, and I thought, let's just go Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome, those three. Salome was mentioned. And they're discussing on the way, who's going to roll the stone away? We don't get the big report about the earthquake on the way that rattles their teeth in their head. Matthew talks about this earthquake when Jesus died. He talks about the earthquake when Jesus rose back to life again. So you almost, according to Matthew, he's got a flair for the dramatic. And these Jewish people, they like this stuff. It's amazing to me the amount of Jewish people that go into entertainment. Seinfeld comes to mind.
Is he overly dramatic?
They're in for the dramatic.
Yes.
So you almost, when the earthquake, when Jesus died, it's like the earth is swallowing Jesus. We got him. And Peter says that he was in the heart of the earth, testifying to all those who had died before. Mel Gibson claims that he's going to deal with that verse. No one has ever dealt with that verse.
Is he doing that in the resurrection part of the
in the Passion, the Resurrection?
In the Passion part too?
Mel Gibson says he's going to deal with that verse. You can't make a doctrine on it because it's one verse in Peter.
That's true.
But you have the earth swallowing Jesus, so to speak, with the earthquake in Matthew. And then when the earth spits him back, he comes back to life again, there's another greater earthquake. Matthew puts an earthquake at his death and his resurrection. Mark doesn't talk about that. Mark's writing to the whole world. Matthew's writing to the Jews. Mark's writing to the Jews in the entire empire. Matthew's writing to the Jews in Jerusalem, so you have this extra dramatic in there. And I love that part in Matthew where it's this. I didn't even see this verse till I think I was 18 in Matthew 27:51. At that moment when Jesus died, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. God did it, not man. It was torn from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, the tombs broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many people. Oh my word. That is like, can you imagine these people? So Jesus has risen now, and there's testimony going on in the city, and people are thinking, you died 25 years ago. He says, I know, I want to tell you. In the underworld, everything changed when Jesus visited and then broke back forth out of it again. No mention of this in Mark, though Matthew has it. They're saying on the way to the tomb, who will roll the stone away? The story of the guards in sealing the tomb. They rolled the stone in front of it. This thing was well beyond 1,500, 2,000 pound stone. I've seen this stone, and it's like 30 cubic feet of stone. I mean, these rocks in the world's strongest man, these things are beach ball sized and they're 300 pounds. Well, this stone is 3-4 feet tall, 1.5 feet thick. Good question. Who's going to roll the stone away? Mark puts this in here. These ladies are asking this. We can't roll it, but they're still going to go anoint Jesus. They're doing this in faith. The disciples are showing no faith at this point. The ladies are. So Jesus appears to the ladies first. Second-class citizens, all through history, get the first-class treatment from Jesus. Take that to heart. I really don't like the feminist movement saying we got to get rid of this Jesus and this oppressive Christian faith so we can really find our way. Really? Ladies are having health problems now that they've never had in history as they're shucking off man, shucking their families, shucking church, shucking Christendom, throwing out the Bible, and going for it in the workplace because we're going to take on the men. Oh dear. Oh dear. It's not working. Jesus liberates them. Jesus visits them first. They go in and there is a young man dressed in white. This is an angel, the other books say. Mark just says he's the young man dressed in white. And it says, as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side.
Young man, there's no need to be down. I say young man. I'm sorry.
It's all right, love.
He's up on the stone.
Yeah, as they entered the tomb. Now Matthew says he was sitting on the stone. Mark says as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man. They didn't see him before they went in, dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. Sitting on the right side. I've been to this tomb several times. You walk straight in, you can see it. I don't know if my left or right means right to you. If I turn, just hear the left and rights here. Don't go by my arm.
Well, when we're looking at you,
when
it
you
looks
walk
like
in,
it's right to us.
Yeah, when you're walking into the tomb, you see down the left side there, and you can see the whole wall. But you walk into it, then you see the cavern on the right where Jesus was laid. So you don't see the right side of the tomb until after you've entered it. If they had seen this guy on the left, they'd see him from outside. They go, "Whoa, somebody's in there. What had you done? What is going on?" But they didn't see this guy until after they entered, and he's on the right side. Note that every little phrase in the Bible is significant. Sitting on the right side. After they got in, they didn't run out. It says they were alarmed. Don't be alarmed. He said, "You're looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified? He is risen. He is not here." Another testimony. "But go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. In other testimonies, it says they went out and talked. Well, for the time slot that Mark's talking about, they didn't talk just yet. They're just frozen. This is overwhelming stuff. These ladies saw Jesus die. Salome and these Marys saw Jesus die. This guy is gone. I remember the sky turned black, the earthquake, the piercing of his side. But they saw this guy is not alive.
Well, they also know they wrapped his body up.
Yeah, and they helped embalm him. So they're going to go back and embalm him, but they don't know how the stone's going to get rolled away.
Yeah.
I love how the Bible walks them through everything. Mm-hmm. So that takes us to Mark 16:8. And we have Mark 16:9 to the end. And in your Bible, it probably says the earliest manuscripts and some other ancient witnesses do not have Mark 16:9 through 20. We had to talk about this stuff in grad school. Yeah, the Sinaitic text has this in here. There's a script called Codex Vaticanus that was found, and it's kept at the Vatican today. That has this in here, but some of the older, earlier ones, truck go by.
Yeah, the truck.
So there's a script that was kept in the Sinai at St. Catherine's, and a script that has been kept at the Vatican. It's called Codex Vaticanus. They have it in here, but the older ones don't. So, and this is the only place in Scripture where you get this rendition of this. So you can't build a doctrine on what Jesus is recorded to say here. You can't build an entire doctrine on it and build a faith on a single passage. It's called Hapax Legomena when it appears only once. That's for the Greek word.
What's it? It's a hay pack.
Scholastic.
It's a hay pack, like in a barn.
Honey, I can't hear you saying this.
Oh, I'm just making a funny. You said a hay pack, like it's in a barn.
I'm missing something here.
Yeah. We'll
have
to.
Right.
We'll work this out next.
So
time.
it says when Jesus rose. So they've got that rendition. They left trembling, bewildered, and they talked to nobody. But this 9 through 20 was put in there at a different time by Mark, apparently. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene. This is God, back alive, and he knows what he's doing, and he has an agenda. I want to appear to this woman who just 3 years prior, she was so sinful that God would never have her. But you have such a pure heart and such a loving eye for Jesus in Mary Magdalene that he appears to her first. The lady whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went and told those who had been with him and who were mourning and weeping. When they heard that Jesus was alive and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Why would Mary make this up? How could she have the gall to make this up? She loved Jesus so much. The disciples loved him, John the most, but they loved what they hoped he was going to do for them. Mary just loved him. So if Jesus comes up to you and says, "Hey, kiss me," or "Can I kiss you?" the disciples are kind of, well, what do you mean by that?
That's a valid question. I mean, in a way,
Jesus
You're
says
like, whoa.
Jesus says to Mary, Mary, and Joanna and Salome, and says, "Kiss me," and they just do it. That's why he appeared to them first. You want to see Jesus? Let him take over your heart and fill it with love, and you will. So we talked about that manuscript issue. And then it says, a very short rendition, the road to Emmaus, that's very amplified in Luke, and we're going to talk about that on Monday. But the walk to Emmaus, and I have walked that walk before. I walked that walk 35 and a half years ago. It gets to you. It really does. Mark just says afterward, so Magdalene goes and tells the other disciples and the others, and they didn't believe it. Afterward, Jesus appeared in a different form to 2 of them while they were walking in the country. That's all it says, 1 verse. Fully amplified story in Luke. We'll do that on Monday. And one of these names, his name was Cleopas, Cleopas. It doesn't say that here. It just says 2 walking in the country. They returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. Disciples, what's it gonna take? And before anyone says, including the feminists, say, "See, you can't count on men. You show them this and that, and they still don't believe." Hold it. Their Messiah had been executed. In this century, when you had a false Messiah come up, you kill the Messiah and you kill all the followers. These disciples weren't sure that they weren't going to get put on the cross too. So cut them a little slack. All right? But the emotions, oh my goodness, they didn't believe it. Later, Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. Mark does not say where. Matthew says where. Luke will say where. And the descriptions in John, we're going to get to next week sometime. It's fascinating detail. Later, Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe. Those who had seen him after he had risen, they weren't going to believe just yet until they saw Jesus personally. So anyhow, Jesus appears to them, and this is the other Great Commission that's in Mark. It's also in Matthew. We're
out of time.
It's time. I'll read it quick. Go into all the world, preach the good news to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will drive out demons. That happens. They will speak in new tongues. That happens. Pentecost, it happens. They will pick up snakes with their hands, and when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. There are churches that you've heard about the snake handling. It really happens and they build this whole doctrine on this one verse.
That's creepy.
Not the smartest way to go about this, because you
goodness.
don't want to play games. I
No.
do know of missionaries who have been caught, and the tribes, the country, they said, yeah, and they execute this person with poison, and it doesn't kill them. And then they wipe this gel green serum stuff off their chin, and they didn't die. The people go, wow, you have more power than our other gods. I realize our gods are false, yours is true, tell us. For a testimony reason, I have heard of this happening.
Yeah.
It will not hurt them. They will place their hands on sick people and they will get well. That happens millions of times. So this really does happen. And then Jesus was taken up after that. So that's Mark's take on the resurrection. They're in Matthew 28, Mark 16, Luke 24, and John 20 and 21. I'm hitting this from every angle. You believe the resurrection, but I want to reiterate it. Then we're going to talk about Paul's take on it in 1 Corinthians 15 next week. God bless you. God bless you. Ask him to, and he does. We'll see you tomorrow.